So now we want to put some authentication middleware on our protected routes. So let's actually create that middleware now. So let's go up to this middleware that we've created, and just above it we can create a new function. So let's authenticate equal, and then request response, and then next. Okay, and now here we want to check whether the request has a valid JWT token. Okay, so let's get that token. We will do request.header and get that token, and then we want to verify the JWT. So JWT.verify, and we have to pass in the token first, and then the secret. And to get the secret, we have to actually go to where we first defined it, which might be in the user model. Let's go and see. User model, let's see. Yep, JWT secret up here. So what we can do is create a model method. So let's do that, and let's create it up here. So let's do user schema dot statics dot get JWT secret, and that will be equal to a function, and here we'll just return the JWT secret. There we go. That's all we have to do. And now we have to go back to app.js, and here we have to get that. So here we can do user dot get JWT secret. Let's check if that's right. Yeah, okay. JWT secret. Okay, and then we're gonna get the callback. So the callback here, decoded. Okay, we actually have to see if we are importing JWT, so let's just check that first. Okay, we're not, so let's make sure we get that. Require JSON web token. Okay, save that. We're still getting an error here. Oh, okay, right, yeah, so we made a mistake here. That is like that. Okay, save that now. Let's see if we get the error. Nope. Okay, so that's good. So here, what we can now do is check for the error. So the JWT is invalid. So do not authenticate. Do not authenticate. Okay, and here we can actually do response.status 401.send, and then send the error. Okay, and then else, the JWT is valid. So here we can call next, and then the request can continue. But before we call next, let's actually just set the user ID that is on the request object. So set that to decoded ID. Okay, save that. The user ID was encoded with the secret when we generated that token, so that's why we are able to grab it here. Okay, so that's all done. Now we can actually start using this. So let's go down to our routes and let's start using this middleware. Alright, so down here, when we do get/lists, this will get all lists, and this is protected because you should only be able to access your own lists and only if you have the right credentials. So let's put that here. Authenticate. Okay. That's been misspelled. Let's just correct that. Okay, go up here. Okay, so now that is using that middleware. Great. And what we also want to do is we want to make sure that we are only returning the lists that belong to that user, that authenticated user. And that's really easy because we have access to the user ID from the Authenticate middleware, which we just coded. So let's do that now. So we want to return an array of all the lists in the database that belong to the authenticated user. Okay, so to do this, we have to set some conditions here. So we have to set, well, first things first, let's go and look at the model. Okay, so right now we just have the title. What we have to do is put a user ID field here that will store the object ID of the user that this list belongs to. So to do this, we just have to create that field. So let's do that now. So we have called this field user ID with an underscore here. That is just convention to show that this field contains an object ID. So that's pretty much it. Let's save this now and go back to the app. Here we can put in a condition that the user ID, has to match the request.user_ID. Remember that the user ID was set to the request object within the Authenticate middleware, which we just wrote, and it's right here. Okay, so that's pretty much done. Let's save this and let's go to Postman. Let's go to the get/lists request that we created, which is here. And let's try and get the lists. So let's send. And we get a JSON web token error that says that the JWT must be provided. That is great. So this route is completely locked down from users who aren't authenticated. Great, okay. And now what we actually want to do is go to the login route over here, and let's log in with these credentials here. Let's send this, and let's grab in the headers, let's grab the access token. Let's copy that, and let's go to the /lists route, and let's go to the headers. Let's add this header with the key name of X access token and the value, which we can paste in now. There we go. So that is a valid JWT token. So this should work, but bear in mind we won't get anything back. That is because when we have previously created these lists, we didn't provide the user ID. So this query will try and find lists with the user ID that matches the user's ID. However, it shouldn't find any because we haven't created lists that contain the user ID property. So we are expecting that this request will go through and have a 200 status, but there will probably be an empty array. So let's press send and see what happens. Okay, great. So we got a 200 OK status and we got an empty array, which is great because it means that this route recognizes that we are authenticated and have access to this resource. So the first thing I want to do is first delete all of the lists we have previously created, purely because we haven't got user IDs on them. So they aren't compatible with this current version of our application because we now require user IDs to be on the list document. So let's go to the delete route and let's start deleting these lists. And one thing that we'll probably notice here is that when we delete lists, the tasks that are in those lists won't delete. So we'll probably have to fix that. Let's actually fix that now. Let's actually go to that route, the delete route here, /list/id, list.find one and remove, and then it will remove that. And then within here, what we can do, here we can now delete all the tasks that are in the deleted list. So to do this, what we can do is create a helper method. So let's scroll down to the bottom, and here we can create a helper method, helper methods, and here we'll call this delete tasks from list. Okay, and it will take in the list ID, and we can get that there. Let's just quickly check the task model. So yeah, okay, so it has the list ID. Yeah, okay. So we will be using the delete many method from Mongoose. So let's do task.delete many, and we'll put the conditions, and the conditions will be list ID. Okay, and then we can do dot then. Okay, and here we don't actually have to do anything, so let's not do a dot then. Let's just leave that as just one statement without a dot then. Okay, so let's save this now, and let's go back up to our root that we were working on. So here we will use that helper method, which was delete tasks from list, and then we'll pass in the list ID, which will be removed list document dot ID. There we go. Save that. Okay, and actually we can go down here and we can do a then, because we can then just do a console log here for testing purposes. So console.log tasks from list ID were deleted. Okay, save that now. And now let's see if that works. So let's go back to our root, and let's go to Postman, and let's see if that works. Okay, so /list/ID, let's go and okay, one thing I just realized is that we can't get all of the lists because we changed it so that it checks the user ID. So what we can do is we can go back to the get lists root. Okay, so we can go to the get lists root, and we can just comment this out for now so that all of the lists are returned regardless of the user ID. So let's save this now and go back to Postman, and let's do this request again. Okay, so now we get all of the lists that are in the database. So now let's go through and delete these lists. So let's copy this ID here, and let's go to the delete root, and let's paste this here. One thing I want to do before I send this request is go to the get request to get the tasks and get these tasks so that we can see whether they are still here after I have sent the delete request for the delete list. So let's try that now. So send this. Great. Okay, so we get back the removed document here. And let's see in the console. Yep, we have tasks from that ID were deleted. Okay, so that looks promising. Let's go to the get/tasks root, and let's send this and see what happens. Great. Okay, so we get an empty array. So that means that they are successfully being deleted once the list has been deleted. Okay, great. Okay, so now let's do this for all of the lists. Let's go for this list here, and let's go to the delete, paste it in here, press send. Great, there we go. Let's do the same with this one. Go back here, paste it in, press send. Great. Go here, copy that, go back here, paste it in here, send. Go here, copy this one, paste this in, press send. And now let's press send again, and let's see if these 4 have been deleted and this one is the only remaining one left. So press send. Okay, great, so there's only one now, so let's just copy this final ID, go to the delete root, paste it in, press send. Great, that was the last one, so we should get an empty array now. Let's press send. Okay, so we get a token expired error, which was pretty unfortunate timing. This is a good opportunity to see that the token expired is working. So it has expired after the 15 minutes that we set. So that's great. Let's go and see how to refresh this token now. So let's go to the login route that we logged in from here. So let's copy this refresh token and let's create a new request. And let's do localhost 3000 /users/me/access token. Great. And go to the headers and first of all put in the ID here, then put in the refresh token and paste in the refresh token. And let's go back to the login root and get the ID. Copy the ID, paste it in here, press send. Great. Okay, we now get the access token. Let's copy this access token, copy it, and go back to the delete route here. Okay, no, it's not here. It's the get route here. And let's paste in the new access token. Okay, great. Let's press send. And there we go. So we now get an empty array. So that's now working. Let's go back to the app and let's uncomment this line so that we get the desired functionality of only returning the lists that belong to the authenticated user. Okay, so save this now, and let's go on to the next route here. So post/lists, let's include the middleware here. Great. So now what we're going to do is create a new list and return the new list document back to the user. But we want this new list to have the correct user ID. So let's put the user ID here, and that will be set to the request.userid, which we have access to purely because it's in the authenticate middleware. Okay, so let's save this, and this should now work. That's pretty much all we have to do. So let's go back to Postman and let's find that route. So post/lists/id/tasks. Nope, that's actually the wrong one. It's this one here. Okay, so it's post/lists. So let's go to the headers and let's add the access token, which I still have in my clipboard. So let's just paste that. Great. And let's press send. Okay, so we have this new document that was created. And that was because this was in the body already. So we now have this test list that was created, and as we can see, it does include the user ID, and that is our user ID here. Great. Okay, so that works perfectly fine. Now let's go back to the GET request and let's see if this works. So let's press send, and we should get back that document that we just created. So let's press send. Brilliant. Okay, so we now get this document in the array. Great. Let's try and create one other list. So let's call this second list with a smiley face at the end. There we go. Let's press send. Great, and we get that document returned to us with our user ID. That looks good. Let's go back to the GET request. Let's press send again, and there we go. We now get two objects in this array, which are the two documents we just created, the two list documents we just created. Okay, perfect. So those two now work. Let's move on. So patch/lists, that actually has to be patch, not path. And this will update a specified list. And actually, we have to put in a check here. Well, first, let's actually just put the middleware here. And here, we have to set the conditions to also include the user ID. So request.user_ID. And the reason we're doing this is because we want only the authenticated user to update their own lists. So without this line of code here, this one here, then pretty much any user could update another user's list. Okay, so let's see if this now works. So let's just go to Postman and let's go to the patch request. Let's get the right list. Let's go to here and let's copy this one here. Let's paste in the correct ID here. Okay, let's go to body. And yep, that's a good update to make. Let's press send. Okay, so we have to add the access token. That's perfectly fine. Let's set that here. And let's paste it in. I think it's still in my clipboard. No, okay, that's not in my clipboard. Okay, so let's go back and get that. Let's go to here. And let's actually just refresh this access token and get a fresh one. Copy this one and go back here. And let's paste it here. There we go. Let's send it. And we get okay, great. So this means that the update went through perfectly fine. Let's go back to the GET request and make sure that the title has been updated. So let's press send, and this should change now. So press send, and there we go. This has now been updated to this is a new title. Great, so now that's working perfectly fine. Okay, so let's carry on to the delete/list/id, and we have to make sure that the user is authenticated, and also that this user can only delete lists that they are the owner of. Okay, so let's put a user ID here. Okay, perfect. Let's save this now. Let's go back to Postman and just make sure that this works. So let's go to the delete root here. So /list/id. Okay, no, here, yeah, great. So /list/id, and let's make sure that we are. Okay, so here we have to put the access token, and I think it's still in my clipboard. Paste it in here. Great. And we also want to go and get this ID here. So let's copy this ID from here, and let's go back to the delete root and paste it in here. Great, let's press send, and let's see what happens. We should get the returned, and we should get the returned object back. The title will be the same, so we have to make sure that this ID changes to this one here. That's how we will know if it works or not. So let's press send. Great, okay, so that looks pretty good. And we get the correct ID here. Cool. So let's go back to the GET request, and let's make sure that this object isn't returned, and it's only this one. So let's press send. And there we go. That's great. So it's not here anymore. So we've successfully deleted that list. Okay, cool. So let's move on to this one here. This one will also need to include the middleware. Great. And that's it, because we don't have to put the user ID here because the task doesn't have a user ID field, purely because the list ID model handles the user ownership already. So let's test this out now and see if it works in Postman. So this is the get/lists/id/tasks, which is this route here. So let's go to headers, and let's put in the access token. And let's paste in the value here. Okay, I don't have the value, so let's go and get that now. And while we're here, let's actually just refresh this token to make sure it doesn't expire. So let's send this request to get the new access token, and let's copy this access token. And go here, and go to the headers, and paste in this access token. And now let's press send. And we get an empty array, which is great because we haven't created tasks for this list yet. So that's perfectly fine. That works perfectly fine because we get a 200 OK status and we get the empty array. So the authentication process worked, and it allowed us to access the resource. Great, okay, so that works now. So let's go back to the code and let's continue with the next route, which will be post/lists/listid/tasks to create new tasks in a specific list. Here we have to include the middleware. Great. We want to create a new task in a list specified by the list ID. Right, okay, so here this will be a bit more complicated, and this is because we have to first check whether or not the currently authenticated user has access to the list ID that's passed in here. So we first have to verify that. So let's use list.find, find one, and we want to find a list with the ID of request.params.listID, which is what was passed in here. And we also want to make sure that that list has the user ID of request.userID. Okay, so now let's do .then, and we'll get the user object back. So now we have to check whether or not a user object has been returned. So let's do an if statement here. So user object is valid. Therefore, the currently authenticated user can create new tasks. Great, okay. So now here we will return true. And then outside of this if statement, we will return false. The user object is undefined. Okay. Then we will chain a .then call, which will get that value. So that will be the Boolean value that we just returned here. And we'll call that can create task. Okay. And then we put an if statement there. And we then move this code to this if statement block. So paste that there. Okay, and then here we can put an else statement. Response.send. And we'll send status. And we'll send a 404 for not found, which tells the caller that this list ID that they're trying to access can't be found. So let's save this now and let's go to Postman. And we are at the post request here, post/lists/ID/tasks. Let's get the correct ID. So let's go to the get request and let's copy this ID here, which is called test list. And let's go back to that post request. Let's copy in the ID. There we go. And let's go to the headers. Make sure that the access token is set. Let's make sure that it's using the correct one. Let's copy that one there and paste it there. Okay, so we have put the access token there, and in the body we can change this title and set this to this task is in test list. Okay, let's press send and see what happens. Okay, we get a token expired error. Let's go and refresh that. So let's press send again and let's get the new access token. Okay, so copy that and go back to the request, go to headers and copy that in. Okay, let's press send. Okay, great. So it has been completed and we get back the document. Brilliant. Okay, so let's see what happens when we don't own this list. So what we can do to test this is we can go to the sign up route. Okay, yep, here. So to the post/user route, and we can create a new user. Let's call it test5@test.com. Let's send this request. And we've created the new user. We get back the document. Let's copy this ID. Let's copy that. And let's go to the post/lists. Let's go to the headers. Okay, right, yeah, so let's go back to the sign up route. And let's get the access token instead. Okay, so copy the access token and go back to the post/lists. And let's paste in the access token. Paste that in. And in the body, we can call this second list. Okay, cool. So that's just great. Okay, so let's send this. Sent. Okay, so we get back that document. Now let's go to the get request here. And let's paste in the access token for this new user. So let's paste that in. And we should see just that list that we just created now. So let's press send. And we get back that list. Great. And it's only showing us this list, which is the only list that this user with this access token controls, right? Not including the list that the other user owns. Okay, so that's great. Now let's get this list ID. Copy this. And let's go back to the post/lists/ID/tasks. And now let's paste in that list ID there, while we still have the same access token that belongs to the other user. And let's press send. So this should throw an error here. So it should send us an error as we don't own this list. Okay, so let's press send. Great. Okay, so we get this 404 not found error, which is great. Okay, so that works perfectly fine. Okay, so let's move on. So patch/lists/list ID/tasks task ID will update an existing task. Okay, so here we have to do a very similar thing to the post request here, as we have to verify that the currently authenticated user has access to the list that they're trying to access. So let's do that now. Let's do pretty much the same thing as we did above. So list dot find one, and in the conditions we will put the ID as request.params.listID. List ID, there we go. Okay, and the next one will be user ID, and that should be request.user_ID. Great. Now let's do .then, and we'll get back the one thing the one thing that I've just noticed is this shouldn't be called user but called list. So let's change this back to list. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Save that. And let's go back here. So .then, and then we'll get the list object here. We will check if the list has a value. So here we can just copy this code here. Let's copy that, all of that. So the list object with the specified conditions was found. Therefore, the currently authenticated user can update the specified task, or can make updates to tasks within this list. Then we will do a .then, and we'll get the can update tasks boolean value, and we'll then have a check for that. So the currently authenticated user can update tasks. So we will then cut and paste this code in this block here. Great. And we'll then have an else statement. And then in here we will say response.sendStatus 404 like before. Okay, great. Let's see if that works now. So let's save that. Let's go back to Postman, and let's get back the previous ID that we had here. So Control Z here, and we get back the previous ID, which the currently authenticated user with this access token can update. And let's change this to patch. And then within the body, we can now change this to this title has been updated. Okay, so let's press send and see what happens. Okay, we get a 404 and we get this error. Cannot patch /lists. Yes, okay, so that's because we have to put the task ID here. So let's get the ID. Let's go to a GET request here and let's get that. So let's copy this list ID and let's go to the GET request, paste this in here, press send. Okay, we have to get the JWT, so let's go to the headers and grab this JWT. Paste that in there, press send. Okay, so we have to get this ID and paste it in here. So /tasks/this ID. And now we should be able to send this. Okay, and we get not found. I'm not sure why that is. Let's go back to our code and see. Oh, right, okay, so it's because I forgot to put the authenticate middleware here. There we go, so save that now, and this should now work. So let's press send, and we get the message updated successfully. Brilliant. That's really, really good. That's really good. Okay, so now let's go back to the GET request here. Where's the GET request? Yeah, here. And let's press send. And now we get the updated title showing in the returned document. This request works perfectly. Let's move on to the delete task. And let's include the middleware here as well. And here we're doing task.findAll and remove. And we still have to do the same thing as before and verify that the currently authenticated user has access to the list that they're trying to access. So let's try that now. We can just copy and paste basically this whole block here. So let's copy this and paste this in here. We could actually create some sort of helper method, but we won't for now. Let's just close this. There we go. And we can then move this code and put that here. And let's create that if statement as well. And we can change this to can delete tasks. Okay, and we can move this and put this into this if block here. Okay, there we go. So this should now work. Let's save this. Save this now, and let's go back to Postman and let's see if this works. So we'll go to the delete root. So /list/id/tasks/task ID. Yep. Okay, so let's go and grab. Let's go and grab this task ID here and put it here, and let's get the list ID as well of this one here, paste it in there, and let's also go and get the refresh token that we used, this one here, and let's go to the headers and let's put the access token here, paste that in there, and that's pretty much it. So let's press send, and we get a JWT expired error, so that's fine. Let's go and get a refreshed version. Let's copy the new access token, go back to the okay, and here we can paste this in and press send. There we go. That does look pretty good. We get back the deleted document, which is great. To confirm that this has been deleted, let's go to the get root and let's press send, and hopefully there should be an empty array returned. So let's press send. Oh yeah, okay, so let's paste in the new access token here. Okay, press send, and we get an empty array. Brilliant. So that does mean that this delete request worked. So there we go. We have applied authentication to all of our routes that needed to be protected. So now we can go back to the Angular application and make sure that it is logging in properly and that it is sending the access token with each request. Also, we have to make sure that it is able to send the refresh access token request when the access token expires. That's the next thing we have to do.